Welcome to week 6, students. Let's just take a quick second here to really recognize and appreciate how far we've already come in just 6 weeks. We're about a third of the way through the program and we've basically got a company. But what we need to move forward is a corporation. This is pretty much what we're going to cover in this week's podcast episode. How do we actually make a corporation? How do we do that within the company program? A part of it is we need to pick a charity of choice. And this is a topic that myself and the podcast guest for this week talk about alongside taking initiative while you're a teenager. Anyways, back to the whole corporation piece. Now, I talked about it a little bit last week, but we didn't dwell on it too much. What makes a corporation a corporation? I'm sure you've heard of the term and you might have an idea. For example, a corporation is where people dress like this and walk around carrying briefcases. But that's not quite it. One aspect of being a corporation revolves around ownership. Now, I won't fully flesh out the concept here for the sake of time, but if you are curious and you don't know about what exactly makes a corporation and what the process would look like for you, please take a look at the video in the end card right now. During week 6 of the program, we're going to incorporate our company by submitting the Incorporation Request form. Essentially, what we're going to be doing is collecting shares or selling off ownership of our company in order to raise some money. We want this money so we can finally get our hands on different equipment and raw materials that we need to start our production or services. This whole process is called initial capitalization, and I'll say it again, our goal is to be fully capitalized by the end of this company program week. Something else that we want to do is establish our collective identity, aka our company information. What you and your team can start doing is talking about your company name, deciding on a logo design, choosing your mission statement, and like I mentioned before, finalizing on a charity of choice. Social entrepreneurship is a goal for all of us in the program. And by the end of this, when you liquidate your company, you will be donating 15% of your profits to a charity. Now, you're going to choose that charity right now, and it makes sense to choose one that aligns with your own mission, your own product, or anything else that you find important. Once you finalize these details, you can submit the company information form. The link for it can be found in the description. And this is due on week 7, so you still have some time, but if you've already had these discussions, you might as well finalize it and submit the form now. Now, once you've done these things, the final thing you need to be a corporation is to submit a business plan. What you're going to be doing is articulating exactly what your plan of action is. You're making an announcement of everything that you want to do and putting it in a report format. The business plan isn't actually due until the end of week 9, so there's still a little bit of time before we get there. Regardless of that, I still recommend that you and your team members talk about these basic details as it'll guide your operations as you start to bring your product to the market. 2 great starting places to build a skeleton of what will eventually be your report would be the value proposition and the break-even analysis. Now, some teams have already completed this in the earlier weeks. If you're a team that hasn't, I recommend that you go to your Google Drive and revisit these documents. Again, it's a great place to start your business plan because it's essentially the foundation of your business. Now, that's what we want to be working on. Next up, we have our interview segment, and our guest for this week is Sheliza Kassam. Sheliza is not actually that much older than all of you watching this video right now. She's also a company program alumni from right here in South Alberta. Now, Sheliza started her own charity and has helped many children and families across our area. And she has a lot to teach you about taking initiative as a young person as well as charities, which again aligns with kind of the information we're working on this week. So anyways, tune into this week's interview segment. Hey Sheliza, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Josh?
I'm very good too. Thank you. And thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast. I wanted to talk to you because I've heard some of the stories that you've shared before, and I think it's going to be very helpful or inspirational, motivational for some of the students to hear that too. Now, before I get ahead with all that, could you please share a little bit about yourself and what you do?
For sure. So, hi, everyone. I currently am an engineer at Synovus Energy. But when all of my endeavors began is when I started my philanthropic journey. I started it I would say when I was 5 years old, I started volunteering. And then when I got to about age 12, I joined a program called Youth Central that really helped me basically work with a variety of people, volunteer at a bunch of places, and kind of learn what excited me and what didn't. And then from there, I was able to kind of expand myself. I joined Junior Achievement and I learned a lot of entrepreneurship skills. And so when I went to Junior Achievement, I learned the entrepreneurship side, and then I'd already the philanthropic side, and I kind of combined them and decided that I wanted to start my own charitable organization. Volunteering at a bunch of homeless shelters, I kind of noticed that there were detachment within the families, and they weren't really always sitting together. They weren't really communicating with each other. And I thought that seemed kind of weird to me, because what better situation than two people in a similar situation come together and kind of talk about their feelings and whatever's going on and have events together. So that's kind of what led me to create the charitable organization called Children's Birthday Miracles, which throws birthdays for less fortunate children across the globe. We've had the privilege of expanding. So we've been in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, Nairobi, Kenya, Victoria, Vancouver, Strathmore, and of course, Calgary. And then I also had a friend pass away from cancer. So since then, we've been able to expand to kids' cancer care. And that's been something near and dear to my heart. And so I'm really happy where the organization has grown. Obviously, with COVID, things are a little bit different. Instead of having birthdays, we more so give the supplies and they host it themselves. But it's still going on, which is great and awesome to see. And yeah, that's kind of about my charity. And then in terms of my career, I still felt that I wanted to do something to help the world and make it a better place. So I am a chemical engineer by degree, but on the side, I do run the charity still. So yeah, that's a little bit about myself.
Yeah, see, that's awesome. Now, again, I'm just going to revisit the fact that Sheliza is a JA alumni. She did the company program too. And I know a lot of the students in the company program are interested in starting their own, nonprofit or charity, either right now or once you're transitioning into post-secondary. So Sheliza, I know you mentioned that you got the entrepreneurial side from the company program, but in terms of your philanthropy, you said you started at about age 5. Was there anything specific that drove you to it, or did you just feel like it was your natural calling?
Yeah, well, in my mosque, actually, there were so many volunteer opportunities for young girls and young boys. And so I automatically was drawn to help kind of while I was already at mosque. I was like, oh, my parents are sitting down, might as well help the seniors or whatever kind of needed help. And that was kind of what's really been instilled upon since we were young. So I've been volunteering since I was 5 because of that. But also, my mom is a social worker and she is the greatest human. She has such a kind heart. And being her daughter, I was obviously, learning about her career and what kind of drove her to her career path and how volunteering has really made a difference in her life. So that kind of impacted me. And then also, my parents immigrated here. So I'm super grateful to be a Canadian citizen. And in terms of everything that I've been given, I'm super privileged for a great education system and just so many things that I think people take for granted. So I'm definitely really privileged and I'm happy to volunteer. And I think one of the biggest things about volunteering is you kind of figure out what drives you. So when I was volunteering at all these places, I found that the best part about it was one, learning creative skills like face painting and things like that. And then another thing that drove me was kids. I love kids. I just think they're so adorable and they have so much life. And that was something that I love. So that's why I started the charity just directed towards children, because that was something that I was so passionate about. And yeah.
That's fair. No, that's great to hear. I agree. There's a lot of blessings around us, and it is important to kind of pay it forward sometimes. And again, it's good to hear that through your own volunteering efforts, you were able to find what specific things you wanted to kind of work on and expand upon. So talking about children's birthday miracles, again, it's super awesome that you just decided to jump on that, take the initiative when you were still in high school, I believe. Yeah. So that's about right, right? High school.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was in grade 10 when I started it.
Okay, see, that's crazy for me because I don't even know what I was doing when I was in grade 10, right? But so you're in grade 10 when you started it. You were still younger, still learning a lot of different things. Um, you know, for you, throughout the years, what were some of the biggest lessons you would say you got through founding and working with Children's Birthday Miracles?
Totally. So, number one thing I can say is JA really sets you up for creating a image for yourself. So they teach you a lot about how to present yourself in situations, how to act in a business setting, and really just how to create your own brand. So I think JA really helped me in terms of that because I was very on the shy side when it came to that part. But the biggest thing that I learned throughout my charity and endeavors is that networking gets you really far in life. Every single person you meet could be someone that could be a sponsor, a volunteer, someone who can benefit you in some sort of way, some partnership, any sort of thing. And I have a story. So I was fortunate enough through JA to win the Deloitte National Inspiration Award back when I was in grade 9. And basically, when I went to this gala, it was the year after, I was sitting at this table and there was a man beside me. And I was super shy. I didn't even bother talking to him, but he came up to me and said, "Hey, I was just wondering what brought you here today? Like, why did you win this award?" And I was like, "Oh, well, basically, I started this charity. We throw birthdays for less fortunate children. And it just started. And we actually recently expanded to Africa." And I was just going on about that story. And he said, "You know what? I would love to donate. Here's my business card." And I look at the business card and it's shaped as a Big Mac. And he was the founder of McDonald's Canada and Russia. And since that day, he has supported us. He has donated money. He has donated Happy Meal toys. We had an event this year for kids' cancer care where we had a huge breakfast scavenger hunt, and McDonald's sponsored the whole thing. So this has been a lifelong partnership, and just from that one encounter. So you literally don't know who you'll meet and how will benefit you. But even then, I also think there's the aspect about networking, but there's also a way to be smart about networking as well. And that's keeping in contact, thanking your sponsors. Every time I had an interview with a news agency, they would say, "Oh, who's really helped you?" And I would always talk about McDonald's because this is an encounter that I had face to face. It was so special to me. And I was only 16 at the time. So it was just made my day. But yeah, such an incredible experience. Constantly would tell people in JA, network with the people, network with your advisors. I even talk to some of my advisors to this day because they worked in oil and gas and I run into them. Those connections will get you far. So that's something that I would really tell every JA member to take in.
Yeah, no, and I agree. That's an important lesson. In last week's podcast episode, we were speaking with Melissa from who's the president and CEO of JA, and she also mentioned that within your companies right now, students, you're kind of sitting shoulder by shoulder with the future leaders of business or whatever industry they choose to pursue, as well as your mentors that they're already established within their own areas. So it's important to talk to them. And Sheliza, I can relate with that story. Well, a little bit, right? I can relate with the networking story because I think back to opportunities where I could have had the ability to talk to people that I've looked up to, or people that inspired me, but when I'm sitting there in the moment, I would just get too shy and I wouldn't take advantage of that. Even just going up to someone and telling them that you look up to them, whatever it might be, it does go a long way. And years later, I'm still thinking about those things because I was like, man, I really should have just said something in that moment. So networking is important, getting to know people is important, and at the end of the day, it's like other people is the meaning behind everything. So students, I'm gonna second with what Sheliza recommended. Go out there, network. You have so many opportunities through the company program, as well as opportunities attached to it to meet fellow-minded people.
And to add on to that, I was actually going to say, like, these advisors and these people at these galas, they are there for a reason. They are the busiest people and they are there for a reason. So trust me, they want to hear your stories. They want to know about who you are. There's a reason they volunteer for it. There's a reason they do it out of their spare time. So make the best of the opportunity because honestly, they really care about it.
Yeah, that's a very good point too. I know it's not always intuitive to have that perspective, especially as a student going through the program. But yeah, we say it so often that the volunteers are there to help you, that the mentors in the program are there to do just that. They're there to mentor you. And sometimes, you shouldn't make assumptions about whether or not someone wants to talk to you. You should just go there and do it, right? They are there for a reason. Anyway, Shaliza, so on kind of the topic of lessons learned from children's birthday miracles. I wanted to ask if there was any other specific memory that sticks out to you with your charity. Is there something that for some reason randomly just pops back into your head?
Yeah, so there's this one story that I think I always really felt close to. So essentially, it was one of the girls' birthdays we were at the Brenda's house at the time, and that's through the children's cottage. And we were doing our usual celebrating the birthday. We had like a magic show, we had a crafts in the beginning. And there was one birthday girl that time. So that was kind of nice. She got the special attention. And so we were getting ready to blow the candles on the cake, and we were about to sing happy birthday, and she said, wait, I want my dad to be here. And I guess the dad he was a single father. He didn't feel comfortable ever coming down. He wanted to stay inside and just stay in his own home and just kind of keep to himself. But the daughter basically ran upstairs and said, could you please come down? It's my birthday and everyone's there, because everyone from the shelter was gathered. And he said, I'll think about it, right? Anyways, so she comes down, and I guess he decided that he wanted to surprise her downstairs after how long he has never really come down for our birthdays. And then he came down and he fed her the cake, and it was just honestly so adorable, because that's kind of the reason why I started the charity. It was so that way we could get those stories of people who really didn't want to interact with the other families to kind of come down and realize, you know what, it's about having fun. It's about making the best of the situation and doing what we can for these families, even if it is just a birthday. So that was one story that kind of stood out to me. And then another is we had a mother come up to the staff right after the birthday and said, thank you so much for providing my daughter her birthday, because there's no way I could afford to do this, because she had just moved into the shelter. So I think that also stood out to me, because I always plan these birthday parties, but I don't realize that it actually makes more of an impact on the mother and the father than it does on the actual kid, because the parents are just so grateful. So I think that's something I learned over time of starting the charity. At first, it was just about fun and the kids, but then it became a more family thing. And I think that was the beauty of it.
Yeah, no, those are great stories, and again, props to you because that's amazing work that you do. I'm playing it cool right now because we're recording, but I'm about to tear up, so I think I'm going to switch the topic really quick. From children's birthday miracles, and I'm just going to ask you in general, as someone you started your own initiative when you were in grade 10, I believe you said, right? So again, we have young people in the program who kind of want to work in this space. They want to help their community as well through starting their own charities or nonprofits. At least in 2021, do you have any advice for these young people? Anything that they should be on the lookout for?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I was mentioning in the beginning, for anyone who wants to start a charity, I love it. I think it's a great idea, but I also think you really need to make sure you're passionate about it. So really make sure while you're doing volunteering activities or even extracurriculars, see what makes you tick, see what makes you excited, and who makes you excited. Is it seniors? Is it kids? Is it families? And that will really help grow the organization, because if you're not passionate for that long of a period, it slowly goes away, right? So I think that's one thing I would suggest. Another thing I would suggest too is when you're recruiting volunteers, it can be the hardest thing, because today they want to be your volunteer and the next day they're like, just kidding, I'm not getting paid, I don't want to do it, which is fair. But the biggest thing I would say too with volunteering is you got to get people that are willing to volunteer, and also it aligns with their interests. So for example, if they're studying IT or computer science, get them to build a website. If they're doing marketing, get them to do social media. That was the biggest thing that I learned over the years of CBM, is when I noticed that my volunteers were slowly like demotivated, is I was like, how do I grab them back in? Well, I looked at what they were studying and I tried to align it so that way it helps them get a career in the future as well. So it kind of worked like that. Another thing I would also mention is you have to make sure that your funds are sustainable. So coming up with initiatives that are basically sustainable. So for example, at CBM, we have a program called Party It Forward. We know that every kid is going to have a birthday every single year. So we get a lot of kids that want to donate their presents or donate decorations or donate half their gifts, things like that. So what we do is we keep in contact with those kids. So that way every year they want to donate, they want to give back, and also having something exciting to look forward to. So we invite them to the birthdays. We have tangible experiences that these people can go through and these volunteers can have. So that way they feel like they're part of a team. They feel like they're part of a community. Donating is great, giving money is great, but there's something about actually volunteering and actually seeing the way that your organization runs in person that makes a huge difference. And I constantly tell people that it's great to start a charity, but if there's not that drive, that motivation, that tangible impact, it won't go as far as you want it to go. So that's something I would say to anyone that wants to start a charity. Again, if they want to reach out to me, they totally can. But yeah, that's pretty much what I have to say.
Yeah, that's fair. And I'm actually glad you touched on those points specifically. Kind of more tangible advice. Often what we see here, especially during the pandemic, a lot of organizations kind of popped up, right? But it was nothing more than maybe a social media page with no plan or passion behind it, right? So it is kind of, again, in my eyes, at least a commitment that you're making, and you want to make sure you have somewhat of a strategy attached to it. You know, even with nonprofits, where in company program we're learning the basics of business and entrepreneurship. Almost everything that you're going to learn with making your own company applies to creating a nonprofit. At least, again, that's my perspective. So, you know, thank you for sharing your 2 cents on that, Sheliza. And unfortunately, you know, we're just about wrapping up here. So I wanted to ask you a final question. You know, especially as an alumni of the company program, did you have any final thoughts or words you'd like to share with the students?
The last couple thoughts that I have for anyone in company program is honestly really try to maximize your time and effort within those weeks. It's a minimal time. And honestly, the best thing to do is really try to reach out to your advisors, reach out to different people, and try to hear people's opinions and thoughts, and try to make a product or business that you really feel that will bring value to the society and that hasn't been done before. I think that's the biggest thing. And another thing I would mention is that when you're choosing your charity of choice, choose one that relates to not only your company's values, but your company's basically business or product, because that can really even help build sales, and that can build morale, and that can really help build the business overall. So I think that was something that I really learned from JA, and like everything is that when you have something that aligns with your values and you work with a charity that aligns with those, it can really go a long way. So I think that would be my biggest piece of advice. And also have fun, make some friends, and make some money. Yeah.
There you go. You just ticked off the main boxes with company program there.
Yeah.
Anyways, you know, thank you so much for your time, Sheliza, as well as your insight, you know, to help the students out here. Again, unfortunately, that's all the time we had. So thank you once again. Again, I want to give a big thank you to Sheliza for sharing her insight on this week's interview. Now I'm going to do a quick recap of everything that we're working on this week. Essentially, the common theme for the next little bit is to incorporate our company and to position ourselves as an official corporation. Alongside talking about how you're going to make your product or service and how you're going to start to make those sales, something that you're going to do this week is submit your incorporation request. Make a plan on how you're going to collect your shares and also submit the form that can be found in your Google Drive. The link for this form can also be found in this description box. Due by the end of next week is your company information form. The link for this can also be found in the description. Within this form, you want to provide your name, your logo, your mission statement, and a charity of choice. A lot of you have already started having conversations about these things, so we just want to continue them, put them in a form, and submit that. And the last step in making ourselves a corporation here is to make a business plan. Again, this is a statement of everything you want to do with your company and how far you want to take that. More information on this, including a template, will be coming out in the following weeks. You have about 3 weeks to complete it, but it's not a bad idea to start having conversations about it now. And if you haven't done so, complete your value proposition and break-even analysis, as they're instrumental in completing your business plan. That's all for this week, students. I recognize that all these assignments, including incorporating your company, are things that you have to do alongside with finalizing your production and making sales and having all these strategies. But it's still important that we get these things done because it's how we grow our company. Anyways, I look forward to seeing you all next week.